Hi, my name is Chris Yukins. I'm a professor of government procurement law at George Washington University Law School in Washington, D.C. And I want to thank you for joining us today in this series called United Nations Guidance on Anti-Corruption and Procurement. This is Module 1, the introductory module for this series. Again, thank you for joining us. This series has 6 different modules. In this module, in the introductory module, I'll be introducing you to two of the sponsoring organizations for the series, UNOPS and the International Anti-Corruption Academy. In Module 2, we'll be discussing concepts and definitions in procurement and anti-corruption to get a better sense of how anti-corruption institutions and legal devices can be used in a procurement system. In the third module, we'll be discussing the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which is a very important bulwark against corruption in procurement systems around the world. In the fourth module, we'll be talking about conflicts of interest in public procurement. In the fifth, we'll be talking about remedies and bid challenge mechanisms, way that disappointed bidders, for example, can challenge corruption that arises in a procurement. And in the sixth and last module, we'll be talking about integrity of public officials and bidder employees during the course of a procurement. Again, thank you for joining us. I'd like to start a little bit with some background on myself. Again, I'm Professor Christopher Yukins. I'm a professor at George Washington University Law School's Government Procurement Law program. That program was launched in 1960 by two professors, Ralph Nash and John Siminick, and it continues today to be one of the world's leading programs in government procurement law. We have both law students and master's students, or not law students, taking courses with us, doing research, studies, extensive papers that help shape policy both in the United States and around the world. And they're participating both in traditional in-person classes and through online courses, much like this one. I worked for decades in anti-corruption procurement, both as an academic and as a practicing attorney, both in the U.S. government, in the Justice Department, and in the private sector on matters involving criminal and civil fraud and corruption. I've handled matters ranging from violations of procurement integrity requirements, ethical requirements, ethical breaches, bribery, gratuities, really a wide range of matters involving corruption issues, both again inside the government and outside the government. A lot of the resources I'll be referring to during the course of this program are available on my blog, Public Procurement International. You should feel free to resort to that. It's a good place for me to post materials that might be useful for this class and for other teaching that I do around the world. I'm very honored to join the International Anti-Corruption Academy, or IACA, in this effort. I've taught for many years at IACA and through many different courses, including a specialized week-long course focused on procurement and anti-corruption. IACA is located in Luxembourg, just outside Vienna, Austria. It's located, actually, it's situated in what used to be, you can see here in the photo, a nobleman's house just outside an imperial park that was frequented by the Habsburg emperors. IACA has extensive programs in anti-corruption and compliance, and it's got 100% focus on those issues. It has 80 member states that work with IACA on ensuring that students and oftentimes civil servants can learn about anti-corruption and compliance. They have literally thousands of participants every year in their programs, and they have alumni in many countries around the world. I've taught in many different fora, and I have to say the students I've taught at IACA have consistently been the most diverse, with students from Mexico, Bhutan, across Africa. It's really a very diverse student body, and the students learn from each other about strategies and ways to combat corruption on a day-to-day basis. In our case, in our courses, corruption in procurement systems. I'd also like to give you a little bit of background on UNOPS, previously known as the UN Office of Project Services. It goes by its acronym now, UNOPS. It's an operational arm of the United Nations. It provides project management, procurement, and infrastructure services to governments, donors, and UN organizations. UNOPS operates worldwide, including in countries that are highly vulnerable to corruption, including, for example, post-conflict nations. It's a central procurement resource for the United Nations system and its partners. UNOPS procures around $1 billion worth of high-quality goods, works, and services each year on behalf of those partners. UNOPS importantly promotes clean business practices worldwide, and this training course is part of those efforts by UNOPS to ensure clean procurement, to stop corruption in procurement. UNOPS's top priority in all procurement processes is anti-corruption. UNOPS's goal is to maintain public confidence in UNOPS itself and its partners by mitigating the risk of doing business with corrupt vendors. UNOPS seeks to ensure that all parties involved in procurement processes comply with all relevant laws and regulations. And UNOPS puts particular emphasis on proactive efforts to raise awareness on compliance and ethics in the area of procurement. This training is part of UNOPS' proactive efforts to raise awareness on fraud and corruption in public procurement. Again, this training is part of a joint initiative between UNOPS and the International Anti-Corruption Academy. This training is intended to provide a practical introduction to the risks of corruption in public procurement and how those risks can be minimized. The training is based on internationally recognized processes and on principles developed through United Nations initiatives. Those include the UN Convention Against Corruption, which in Article 9 addresses corruption in procurement, and the Model Law on Public Procurement that was produced through the UN Commission on International Trade Law, or UNCITRAL. I was an advisor to the U.S. delegation in the effort to revise the UNCITRAL model law. That model law was finalized in 2011, and the guide to enactment that accompanies the model law was finalized in 2012. Those documents are also available on the UNCITRAL website. The training here focuses on the procurement process and how this process could be strengthened according to those international best practices. The training includes examples from around the world, and this is an important point that bears special attention. The training emphasizes that strong anti-corruption systems bolster better procurement. An effective anti-corruption system, in other words, should make it easier for a procurement system to achieve its core goal of buying better value. Each module in this set of modules will have three basic elements to it. First of all, there'll be a video presentation, much like this one. There'll be reading materials that are recommended, and where appropriate, there'll be testing presented that will rely on the reading materials and on the video presentation. Just like to go through with you some resources that you might find useful. We'll be drawing on these resources in more detail in the following modules. The first one is a guide by the UN Office of Drugs and Crime, the UNODC, on good practices in ensuring compliance with Article 9 of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. I helped develop this guide with Johannes Schnitzer, an Austrian lawyer, and there's a website listed here where you can find a copy of the guide. The guide is available in English, Spanish, and Russian. The Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, has produced its own guide, Preventing Corruption in Public Procurement. Again, there's a website here where you can get a copy of this guide. It's a very useful background guide as you're trying to think through strategies for anti-corruption in procurement. I've listed here an article that I did on integrating integrity in procurement, looking both at the UN Convention Against Corruption and the UNCITRAL model law. I've also listed another resource from the UNODC as part of their Education for Justice lecture resources. It's on corruption and procurement, and it's available again from the UNODC website. This concludes our first introductory module. I hope you found it useful, and I look forward to joining you in the next module. Thank you.